Which Azure service is a globally distributed, multi-model, NoSQL database? Correct answer. Azure Cosmos DB. Explanation. Azure Cosmos DB is a fully managed NoSQL database with global distribution, multiple APIs, and guaranteed low latency. Why others are incorrect. Azure SQL Database, relational SQL database, not NoSQL. Azure Table Storage, NoSQL key value store, but without the advanced features of Cosmos DB. Azure Database for PostgreSQL, relational PostgreSQL service, not NoSQL. Which Azure service provides a content delivery network for caching and delivering content globally? Correct answer. Azure CDN. Explanation. Azure CDN caches static content at edge locations to improve performance for global users. Why others are incorrect. Azure Traffic Manager, DNS-based routing, not content caching. Azure Front Door, global load balancing and acceleration, but not solely a CDN. Azure ExpressRoute, private connectivity, not content delivery. Which Azure service should you use to manage encryption keys for cloud applications? Correct answer, Azure Key Vault. Explanation. Azure Key Vault securely stores and manages encryption keys, certificates, and secrets. Why others are incorrect. Azure Security Center, security posture management, not key storage. Azure Active Directory, identity management, not encryption keys. Azure Monitor, performance monitoring, not secret management. Which Azure feature provides role-based access control for resources? Correct answer, RBAC, role-based access control. Explanation. RBAC allows you to assign roles to users, groups, or services for fine-grained access control to Azure resources. Why others are incorrect. Azure Policies enforces rules but not role-based permissions. Azure Resource Manager, deployment management, not access control. Azure AD B2C, customer identity management, not resource access. Which Azure pricing option offers the lowest compute cost for workloads that can be interrupted? Correct answer, Spot VMs. Explanation. Spot VMs provide unused Azure capacity at a steep discount but can be evicted when Azure needs the capacity. Why others are incorrect. Reserved instances, cheaper than on demand but requires commitment. Pay as you go, flexible but higher cost than Spot. Azure Hybrid Benefit uses existing licenses to reduce cost, but not the cheapest for interruptible workloads. Which Azure service is used to run event-driven serverless code without managing infrastructure? Correct answer, Azure Functions. Explanation. Azure Functions runs small units of code, functions, triggered by events, fully serverless. Why others are incorrect. Azure Logic Apps automates workflows, not code execution. Azure App Service hosts web apps, not event-driven code specifically. Azure Service Fabric, container and microservices orchestration, not pure serverless. Which Azure service allows for real-time analytics on large streaming data? Correct answer, Azure Stream Analytics. Explanation. Azure Stream Analytics processes and analyzes real-time streaming data from devices, sensors, or logs. Why others are incorrect. Synapse Analytics, data warehouse for batch analytics, not real-time. Data Lake, storage service, not analytics engine. Data Factory, data movement and transformation, not real-time analytics. Which Azure tool can assess your security posture and recommend improvements? Correct answer. Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Explanation. Defender for Cloud provides continuous security assessments, recommendations, and threat protection. Why others are incorrect. Azure Key Vault manages keys and secrets, not posture assessment. Azure Policy enforces governance but doesn't give security recommendations. Azure Sentinel, SIEM tool for threat detection, not posture analysis. Which Azure feature helps ensure compliance with legal and regulatory requirements? Correct answer. Azure Compliance Manager explanation. Azure Compliance Manager provides tools to track, manage, and report on compliance with various regulations. Why others are incorrect. Cost management tracks spending, not compliance. Azure Policy helps with compliance but is not a compliance reporting tool. Azure Monitor collects and analyzes performance data, not compliance info. Which Azure service allows you to create workflows that integrate apps, data, and services with minimal coding? Correct answer. Azure Logic Apps explanation. Logic Apps is a PaaS offering for creating automated workflows connecting various services and applications. Why others are incorrect. Azure Functions runs custom code, not workflow orchestration. Azure DevOps, CI/CD and development collaboration, not workflow automation. Azure API Management, API Gateway and Management, not workflow creation. Which Azure service helps you securely connect on-premises networks to Azure over a private connection? Correct answer. Azure Express Route explanation. Azure Express Route provides a dedicated private connection to Azure from your on-premises network, bypassing the public internet. Why others are incorrect. VPN Gateway connects via encrypted tunnels over the public internet, not private circuits. Traffic Manager, DNS-based traffic routing, not connectivity. Bastion, secure RDP SSH access to VMs via browser, not network connection. Which Azure tool is used to estimate costs before deploying resources? Correct answer. Azure Pricing Calculator explanation. The Azure Pricing Calculator lets you estimate the cost of Azure services before deployment. Why others are incorrect. Cost management tracks and analyzes actual spending, not estimation. Azure Advisor gives optimization recommendations, not cost projections. Azure Monitor observes performance and health, not costs. Which Azure service is a managed relational database compatible with MySQL? Correct answer. Azure Database for MySQL. Explanation. Azure Database for MySQL is a fully managed MySQL relational database service. Why others are incorrect. Azure SQL Database, SQL Server based, not MySQL. Cosmos DB, NoSQL, not relational. Data Lake, storage, not a relational database. Which Azure governance tool helps ensure resources meet organizational rules? Correct answer. Azure Policy explanation. Azure Policy enforces rules on resources, ensuring compliance with organizational or regulatory requirements. Why others are incorrect. Advisor provides recommendations, not enforcement. Blueprints combines policies, role assignments, and templates for deployments, but policies alone enforce rules. Monitor observes performance, not governance. Which Azure service enables hosting of containerized applications without managing servers? Correct answer, Azure Container Instances explanation. Azure Container Instances runs containers without managing VMs or orchestrators. Why others are incorrect? AKS, full container orchestration, not instant container hosting. App service, hosts web apps, not general containers specifically. Functions, runs event-driven code, not containerized apps directly. Which Azure security feature allows you to apply policies and manage security across multiple subscriptions? Correct answer, Azure Blueprints explanation. Azure Blueprints lets you define a repeatable set of governance tools, policies, RBAC, templates for multiple subscriptions. Why others are incorrect? Sentinel, security information and event management. Key Vault manages keys secrets, not governance. Advisor, optimization recommendations, not policy enforcement. Which Azure feature provides built-in DDoS attack protection? Correct answer, Azure DDoS Protection explanation. Azure DDoS Protection detects and mitigates distributed denial of service attacks automatically. Why others are incorrect? Firewall controls inbound-outbound traffic, not DDoS defense. NSGs filters traffic based on rules, not attack mitigation. Bastion, secure VM access, unrelated to DDoS protection. Which Azure service provides development collaboration, version control, and CI/CD pipelines? Correct answer, Azure DevOps explanation. Azure DevOps offers Git repos, agile boards, and pipelines for continuous integration and deployment. Why others are incorrect? Functions, serverless code execution, not collaboration. API management, manages APIs, not development workflows. Monitor, performance and logging, not CI/CD. Which Azure service is used to store large amounts of unstructured data, such as images or videos? Correct answer, Azure Blob Storage explanation. Blob storage is optimized for storing large amounts of unstructured data, like media files and backups. Why others are incorrect? Table storage, key value NoSQL store, not large file storage. Queue storage, message queuing, not data storage. SQL database, relational data, not unstructured files. Which Azure service should you use to manage, publish, and secure APIs? Correct answer, Azure API Management explanation. Azure API Management acts as a gateway for managing, monitoring, and securing APIs. Why others are incorrect? Logic apps, workflow automation, not API hosting. App service, web app hosting, not API management. Front door, global load balancing, not API control. Which Azure service provides AI models for speech recognition, translation, and text analytics without requiring you to build models from scratch? Correct answer, Azure Cognitive Services explanation. Azure Cognitive Services provides pre-built AI models for vision, speech, language, and decision-making tasks. Why others are incorrect? Machine learning lets you build trained models, not use pre-built ones directly. Synapse Analytics, data analytics, not AI models. Bot service builds conversational bots but relies on AI models from other services. Which Azure service is a cloud-based security information and event management (SIEM) tool? Correct answer. Azure Sentinel. Explanation. Azure Sentinel is a SIEM and SOAR platform for analyzing security data and automating threat responses. Why others are incorrect. Security Center, Defender for Cloud, monitors security posture but not a SIEM. Firewall, network traffic control, not event analysis. Policy, governance enforcement, not threat detection. Which Azure feature allows you to scale virtual machines automatically based on demand? Correct answer. Virtual machine scale sets. Explanation. VM scale sets automatically add or remove VM instances based on load or schedules. Why others are incorrect. Load balancer distributes traffic but doesn't scale VMs. Traffic manager routes DNS traffic globally, no scaling. Advisor provides optimization tips, not scaling capability. Which pricing model is best for workloads with predictable, constant resource usage? Correct answer. Reserved instances. Explanation. Reserved instances provide cost savings for steady workloads by committing to 1 or 3 year terms. Why others are incorrect. Pay as you go, better for variable workloads. Spot pricing, for interruptible workloads only. Consumption based, usually for serverless apps, not constant workloads. Which Azure service allows you to run massively parallel data processing jobs using Hadoop, Spark, or Hive? Correct answer. Azure HD Insight. Explanation. Azure HD Insight is a managed service for open source analytics frameworks like Hadoop and Spark. Why others are incorrect. Synapse, data warehousing, not big data processing frameworks. Data Lake, storage, not compute. Databricks also does Spark processing but is a different platform, optimized for ML and analytics.